And we start with the acknowledgement that in Ottawa, we meet on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin people. Pursuant to Standing Order 108-2 and the motion adopted on April 29, 2021, the committee continues its study of food security in northern communities. For our witnesses, please speak and listen in the official language of your choice. The bottom of your screen, there is a globe within which you can select English or French. And once you begin your testimony, you can actually switch from one language to another as you speak without changing that icon. When speaking, make sure that your video is turned on and please speak slowly and clearly. When you're not speaking, your mic should be on mute. Pursuant to the motion adopted on March 9th, 2021, I inform the committee that Silvano Sendo and Marilyn Racinos have not completed a technical pretest. With us today by video conference are the following witnesses from the AFN. Dwayne Wilson, Vice President, Stakeholder Relations at Arctic Cooperatives Limited. Daniel Lelève, Manager, Store Services at Fédération des Coopératives du Nouveau-Québec. Alex Yeo, President, and Michael Beaulieu, Vice President, Canadian Sales and Operations at Northwest Company, and Wade Thorhog, Executive Director of the Kujukturvik Community Food Center. Thank you all for being with us today. And Mr. Wilson, would you please start with your opening remarks for 6 minutes, and please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and a sincere good morning or good afternoon to you, to the honorable members of the committee, Canada C3 alumni, wherever you may find yourself this morning. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to participate and share a perspective on the challenges to food security in Canada's remote fly-in communities. I think, as Monsieur Lelièvre would agree, when we look backwards and we listen and read the stories of early co-op leaders in Canada's Arctic, I, for one, have come to recognize that the cooperative movement was one of economic reconciliation, food security, social enterprise, and collective entrepreneurship long before anyone had actually coined or defined these terms. Co-ops work together and have diversified over the decades to achieve scale in pursuit of their vision of people working together to improve their social and economic well-being. Given the short time allotted, I'd like to confirm our organization's belief that a holistic food security discussion includes elements of country food, which have historically sustained the people of Canada's Arctic and remain the most nutritious and culturally appropriate diet for many of the residents of Canada's remote fly-in communities. Despite this, I'm going to focus my comments today more on store-bought food, an area in which our organization is most familiar and has the largest capacity to affect. It's very simple to compare the shelf price of widgets in Winnipeg with widgets in Whale Cove. And many people would point to freight costs or other high operating costs as the reason to explain some of these differences. Residents in the north move cargo around, they purchase airline tickets, they pay higher costs for basic utilities such as electricity and internet. So I think many have an appreciation of these cost differences. However, many will not fully appreciate the vital role that economies of scale, or more accurately, the lack thereof, play in the cost of goods in remote communities. The NNC program commissioned a report on this exact matter entitled The Roles of Scale, Remoteness, Business Structure, Competition, and Other Operational Factors in Nutrition North Canada's Relationship with Canada's Northern Retail Operators, authored by AJ Phillips and Associates, November 2017. For the benefit of the members of the committee, I will send a copy of this report to the clerk of the committee and highly encourage committee members to review this report for an interesting and informative assessment of these topics. From the executive summary, however, I'd like to highlight the following, and I quote, "The Nunavut economy lacks the scale or critical mass to support a normal market structure and I quote, the long supply chains with missing modes exacerbate the impact of the lack of critical market mass," end of quote. While the citation specifies Nunavut, I would maintain that it applies equally well to other territories and much of the northern reaches of many provinces. An important realization for all might be that the unintended consequences of directing resources at marginal projects or initiatives such as greenhouses or the Nutrition North Canada's permission of personal orders might have the unintended negative consequence of further eroding what economies of scale may exist to the detriment of all for the benefit of the few. This manifests itself as economic leakage from many communities. The report also highlights the distinct relationship between household income and food security, or inversely, food insecurity. Sample research and evidence points to a strong correlation between income and food security. In their report entitled Household Food Insecurity in Canada, Tarasuk and Mitchell report that 60.5% of households citing social assistance as their main source of income experience food security issues, compared with under 12% among those reporting their household income as being derived as a wage earner. The data from Statistics Canada Canadian Community Health Survey indicates that over 93% of Nunavut households on social assistance were food insecure. Again, I'm happy to forward this report that I'm citing to the clerk of the committee for the benefit of the members. While the Nutrition North Canada program may affect part of the cost side of the equation, it does nothing to address the lack of scale, nor does it address the most reliable determinant of food security, that being income. Those of us who have spent time in remote communities recognize that there is a high degree of income disparity and bimodal income distribution that are masked by statistics that cite averages or median levels of household income. And I believe in his testimony, Mr. Natan Obed of Inuit Tapiriit Kanatami pointed out some of these issues from their research. I could go on at length, but out of respect for the allotted time, I will stop my comments there. And during this time, we're only going to begin to start to unpack all of the issues surrounding this important topic. But I'll be pleased to try to answer any questions and attempt to provide any clarifications, and also provide my direct contact information to the clerk of the committee should any of the committee members wish to contact me at a later date. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes my comments.
Very much appreciated, Mr. Wilson. Thank you. Mr. Lelièvre, 6 minutes, if you please.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate having this opportunity to speak with you. I'll try not to repeat myself because the previous witness had just said a lot of what I wanted to say. We have the same problems. I just want to emphasize the infrastructures. Numerically speaking, the numbers are growing, and the infrastructures are not growing at the same pace. Our planes are not refrigerated, and this causes a lot of problems in keeping items fresh, and also causes problems with food insecurity. A lot of information is going about on social media that cause a lot of problems for retailers. People don't recognize the costs associated with living in the northern remote areas. We have problems with weather, for example. There are a lot of factors that play against us. A lot of things come into play that affect the prices, and it's very important that people clearly understand the situation in the north. I'm not going to repeat what was just said because Mr. Wilson just said a lot. As far as I'm concerned, it is mainly the infrastructures where there is a huge lack.
Is that your testimony, Mr. Lelièvre?
Oui.
Yes, that is indeed what I wanted to say. I don't want to repeat myself nor what was just said.
And so we go now to Mr. Yeo and Mr. Beaulieu. for 6 minutes, please. Up to 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone on the panel. Thank you again for extending an invitation to the Northwest Company to testify on this really important topic of food security in northern communities. First, a quick overview of the Northwest Company. We operate 135 community stores across Canada and offer a broad range of product services, depending on each community's needs. While our primary focus is on food, we also offer a broad selection of general merchandise, health services, optometry, pharmacy, as well as financial services, and we're the largest employer of Indigenous employees in the North. In addition, we also operate an airline, North Star Air, that provides cargo service to 35 communities in Ontario, Manitoba, and Nunavut. I provide that overview because it gives you a sense of how deeply focused we are on the food value chain and supply chain across all of Northern Canada, and it brings to light the fact that food security is something we care deeply about as a long-standing community retailer. The previous two speakers echo a lot of the points that I'll make. And the first point I really want to make is that food security at its heart is tied to the broader issue of income insecurity and the high costs of living and operating in the North, given the complex operating environment. Just a couple of facts to bring this home. Number one, the cost of energy is up to 10 times higher in Nunavut than versus the South. Making a repair to the building in the North can be 50% higher due to the cost of flying and supplies, skilled trades, the lack of infrastructure that previous speakers have alluded to. The cost impact of greenhouse policies can have outsized effects on the North due to the high carbon footprint required to operate in Northern Canada. One example, the move to low sulfur fuels for ships operating in the Arctic will increase sea lift costs. It's the right thing to do, but it will have an outsized impact on food prices in Nunavut alone. Transport Canada estimated that this move to low sulfur fuels could increase food prices by up to 2% and cost each Nunavut household between $500 to $700 a year. At the same time, no income support programs that many of the customers we serve depend on, whether it be child benefit or old age, is indexed to the higher cost of living and operating and working in the North. So addressing food security will require a multi-pronged solution that's not just about food prices. As an example, Nutrition North, which we will talk about, has done an excellent job of addressing the high freight cost of flying product. Because of the subsidy freight costs, a 4-liter jug of milk in Shamattawa costs $5.79 today, which is comparable to the price of many southern hubs. At the same time, though, it only addresses one cost input that affects the overall issue of income insecurity. So other additional measures will be required to tackle the underlying root causes of food insecurity, whether it be infrastructure, whether it be indexing benefits in North, or making deliberate infrastructure investment to help mitigate the higher cost of operating in North, and to help northern communities mitigate the costs of greenhouse and climate change adaptation. So, once again, I want to thank the panel for inviting me and Mr. Mike Beaulieu to testify on this topic today. I would be happy to explore the topic on the rest of today's panel during the Q&A, or after this panel as well in individual one-on-one conversations as the committee sees fit. Thank you again for your invitation, and we look forward to continuing this conversation.
Thank you. Mr. Beaulieu, were you going to add anything to Mr. Yeo's testimony?
Sorry, unmute myself. At this time, no, but certainly prepared to answer any questions the committee might have.
Yep, just for my own information.
Thank you.
So now we go to the executive director of the, and I hope I'm saying it right, Qajuk Turvik Community Food Center, Wade Torhog. Please go ahead and correct my pronunciation, please.
Certainly. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the committee members for the invitation to speak today. Qajuk Turvik Community Food Center is a charity based in Iqaluit that works to reduce barriers to healthy food in Nunavut. And we accomplish this through a variety of programs and advocacy work. I would also like to thank our national partners, Community Food Centers Canada, who worked with us on the brief submitted to this committee. Much of what I have to say has been mentioned by previous witnesses before this committee, but I will focus on a few important points. First, you are no doubt all aware of the strong link between poverty and food insecurity, and it is no coincidence that the regions of Canada with the highest rates of food insecurity are also those with the highest rates of poverty. We cannot hope to address issues of food insecurity without first addressing lack of income. We feel strongly that boosting incomes for those living in poverty is the most impactful policy tool available. Research shows that increases in income lead to higher rates of reported food security. But recently, we were able to see this firsthand. In the week that the Canada Emergency Response Benefits, CERB, was first distributed in April 2020, demand for our emergency food services suddenly dropped by over 2/3. And while lack of income is the principal driver of food insecurity, as you are also well aware, the cost of living in the North is another major factor, particularly when it comes to food prices. Nutrition North Canada was established to help rectify this problem. And while it undoubtedly benefits Northern communities, it is worth taking stock of its shortcomings, particularly since 2021 marks the 10-year anniversary since its creation. Nitan Obed, the president of Inuit Tapirit Kanatami, pointed out before this committee in December that NNC is blind to income and benefits everyone living in an eligible community. As was mentioned by Mr. Wilson, in Nunavut, income disparities are larger than in the rest of Canada. 1/5 of the population earns over $80,000 a year, while over half of individuals earn less than $30,000. It was demonstrated that food insecurity in Nunavut has actually increased since the implementation of NNC, based on one report, despite an increase in the quantity of subsidized food purchased in communities. One reason for this may be that the list of eligible items that are subsidized are more commonly consumed in higher income households. In effect, NNC may disproportionately benefit higher income households than lower income. It is worth asking whether NNC can be reworked to primarily benefit low-income households, or whether it should be replaced by an entirely different form of intervention. Finally, I would like to highlight the often undervalued importance of our local food system. We are grateful for the addition of the Harvester Support Grant as part of the NNC program, but we hope this is just the start of sustained investments in local harvesters. There is an abundance of food in the Arctic that has sustained continuous settlement of the region for millennia, and yet too often it is not considered a viable food industry. Supporting harvesters has a myriad of benefits to communities, including increased economic development, skills training, and nutrition. But most importantly, food from the land has enormous cultural importance for Inuit and other Indigenous groups in Canada. Too often, agricultural commodities are favored over local foods. In addition to Nutrition North, another example of prioritization of Southern or commodity-based food systems is the emphasis placed on greenhouses as a potential solution. While there are several successful growing initiatives in the North, the output is low compared to the inputs required, and there is often a lack of community support to sustain them over the long term. In the case of Inuit Nunangat, we feel agricultural solutions are a distraction from what could ultimately be accomplished by focusing on the food system that is already established. We should be wary of perpetuating colonial methods when addressing issues in Indigenous communities. In closing, I would like to reiterate our recommendations to the committee. Boost incomes for those living in food insecurity through tax credits or social assistance programs. Reevaluate Nutrition North Canada to ensure that it primarily benefits lower income households, and increase support for local hunters and harvesters. I would also like to thank the community for investing so much time and attention to this issue. We should not be content to live in a country where so many of our citizens are unable to meet their dietary needs, where food banks dot the landscape, and where regions that were once food sovereign are dependent on subsidized imports. We look forward to continued engagement with the government to seek sustainable, culturally appropriate, and impactful solutions to food insecurity in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we go to our committee now for the first round of questioning, which is 6 minutes. I have Mr. Melillo, Mr. Van Koeverden, Madam Berube, and Ms. Ashton. Eric, please go ahead, 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I just want to thank all of the witnesses for joining us today, and just really good testimony already. And I know a lot to think about. And I appreciated that all of you sort of touched on the aspect of income, and that we have to do more to raise incomes in the north, and of course look for more opportunities to do that. So, and I will get back to that, and I hope that I can put a question to all of you with the limited time I have. But I just first want to go to Mr. Wilson, and if I was understanding correctly, I guess you were talking a bit about how there doesn't really seem to be an advantage for companies to scale up their production. I suppose, if I'm understanding correctly, the cost per unit is still relatively high, regardless of how much they're ramping up their production. So I'm just curious if you could speak in a bit more specificity to the circumstances that are leading to this result, and sort of what potential measures you feel might be able to address that.
Thank you very much for the question. It's really not, I wouldn't look at it so much in terms of ramping up production, more look at it from the perspective of the size of the community. So the reality is, I've in my past, I worked for a large retail chain that wouldn't even look at a market unless it served 50,000 people for one store. So their draw was 50,000 people. So, when you took all of their fixed costs and you divided it over a consumer base that's that large, it's now very, very thin. You compare and contrast that to some communities in the Arctic that might have, if I look at Kimmirut as an example, there's about 440 people served by 2 stores. So many of the economists would describe markets that size as being where competition is destructive, where the intended benefits of competition are actually outweighed by the costs of the duplication of those services. 2 management salaries, 2 banks of refrigeration, 2 separate sets of repairs and maintenance, and on and on and on. So you have a little bit of a compounding effect. So really, it's not so much about production as it is on the demand side, owing to the size of the communities. So, the economists, if they would describe these markets as being such a size that competition is destructive, they're actually best served from a economies of scale perspective by a monopoly. And then I guess that begets the next question of, if a community is best served from a cost perspective by a monopoly, what type of monopoly is it best served by? We're of the belief that a monopoly that sees the owners of the business and the consumers as the same people, because now that monopoly position is not going to be abused, because the group of owners and consumers are actually the same people. Thank you.
I appreciate those comments. Thank you for going into more detail there. And with the time I have left, I'll go back to you, Mr. Wilson, and hopefully we can get to everyone else as well. But I'll say that we've heard some testimony, some suggestions about reforming Nutrition North specifically, so that it goes directly to individuals living in the north rather than to retailers. So I guess I'm curious on 2 things. How you would see that benefiting the individuals themselves, and how potentially the retailers might be impacted by that, how they might have to adapt to that change if it were to be made.
Well, I'll attempt to answer the question, given that it's somewhat hypothetical, but I think at the heart of it, really, I think what we're actually talking about is boosting incomes. Because if we use Iqaluit as an example, where the NNC1 rate is $3.45 a kilo, and a 4 liter of milk is 4.5 kilos. If the desire is to change the program entirely, and instead of subsidizing milk, to provide it in the form of income, then as long as everybody is prepared to live with the consequences that unsubsidized milk is probably going to be priced, just doing the simple math, at between $15 and $20, then that's probably an acceptable choice. But that's now reliant on the individuals, taking that extra income and directing it to those nutritious perishable goods. And that is outside of my control, and that is individual choices that people would make day in and day out. But I think it's important to recognize that you need to consider both halves of that equation equally, because the removal of the NNC subsidy is going to have some pretty significant consequences on the price side of the equation.
Thank you. I was hoping to get around here, but I think I'm running short on time, so
10 seconds.
End it there.
Thanks, Mr. Moodle.
Thank you.
Mr. Van Koeveren, 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to all the witnesses for joining today. It's great to hear from you, and I think I speak for all of us when I say that one of the silver linings of this Zoom meeting world that we're all living in is that we can come together without having to travel from your very distant locations. I'm joining you today from Milton, which is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, and the Mississaugas, the Credit First Nation, and many others. And I appreciate the call out. I think it was from Mr. Wilson on the C3 alumni. I am one, and my main exposures to life in the North have been on those vessels, which I was very grateful to have an opportunity to both paddle an Indigenous kayak and meet many people who live in the North, and continue to talk with them relatively often, actually. So I have a couple of questions for really anybody who would like to chime in. I applaud the message of poverty reduction being the most tangible method where we can improve the issue of food insecurity. And I would also just highlight that included in the budget is over $160 million over the next 3 years to expand Nutrition North Canada, which I think is good news, but as you are and have very correctly pointed out, doesn't necessarily achieve all of the necessary outcomes that are important to highlight and consider as we're looking to improve social and health outcomes in the North. But one that I think might get us a little bit closer to that is the enhancement of the Canada Workers Benefit. I'd love to hear from anybody that has any insight or suggestions with how the improvements to the Canada Workers Benefit will have an impact. Mr. Wilson, you referred to the cohort of people that are earning less than $30,000, which is certainly not enough to provide for a family in the North with the additional costs associated. But Budget 2021 proposes to expand the Canada Workers Benefit to support about 1 million additional Canadians in those low-wage jobs, helping them to return to work and increasing those benefits. So, one of the aspects of this is for people who, until now, were only eligible until they were making about $23,000 a year. It's going up to over $26,000 a year. So this means for the first time, most full-time workers earning minimum wage, which will also go up to $15 with the national minimum wage, will receive significant support in this important benefit. So I'm asking for reflections on our current poverty reduction measures, how they'll impact your customers, people living in the North, and any reflections on what we could do specifically for people in the North with those programs or other ones. Thank you.
Like that.
I might just comment on that question quickly. The various programs that we've seen unfold through the pandemic over the past year, whether they're provincial, territorial, or otherwise, that have been directed at low-income wage earners, have had a very positive impact on employees at Northwest across the North in terms of improving quality of life and making, again, just more affordable household decisions for those families. And so we're certainly in favor of continuation of those type of benefits. In addition to the federal approach on adjusting minimum wage, we think is a very favorable move for our employees in the North and for our customers across the North. From a policy perspective, a perspective that is worth, I think, keeping on the agenda to talk about is one that allows people to move effectively from social environment programs to wage economy programs. And I think it was Mr. Wilson who in his earlier testimony commented the difference in food security households. Those that are in social programs are, somewhere reporting in the 60.5% range in terms of reporting food insecurity versus only 12% in the wage economy. And I think it's important for government to keep on the agenda programs that allow people to transition from social programs into wage economies without potentially losing a lot of the benefits that go with social programming. So across many of our northern markets, for instance, heating fuel for households is supported by income programs. And when somebody joins a wage economy, often the trade-off is so great that they essentially can't afford to work. I'll just leave that comment with you.
And could I ask it, do you think that balance between not being able to afford to work, you think this increase of, it's about $2,400 a year for families, and I presume that it would have a similar impact on families in the north. So I suppose my question to you or anybody who would be interested in taking it, $200 a month additionally for families, that helps, obviously. Will it have an impact? Do very many people living in the north earn minimum wage, like the current minimum wage, which is less than $15, which is certainly not a living wage anywhere in Canada, but particularly in the north? And do you think that additional threshold of the $4,000 would maybe offset that, as you put it, can't afford to work?
30 seconds. Go ahead.
I think it certainly heads down that path, and I don't know if I have enough data to give you a real accurate answer on that topic, but it definitely is headed in the right direction. For our own workforce, we're above minimum wage for almost all roles, except for potentially what we would call our casuals, kind of really starting, part-time student type wages, and continue to look at our own wage programs as helping address some of the food insecurity issues and enabling our employees to live better lives.
Sorry, Mr. Willow, in my very limited time. So what you're saying is the addition of
we're at time now. I'm sorry, Mr. Vancouver. We're past 6 minutes. Madam Bérubé, 6 minutes. Please go ahead.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm on the Cree and Anishinaabe territory. It's a big territory. In fact, it represents about half of Quebec. Thank you very much for coming before the committee today. Your testimony is greatly appreciated. I know that the Fédération des coopératives du Nouveau-Québec of Mr. Lelièvre represents 14 cooperatives that represent communities around the Ungava Bay and Hudson Bay. I have a question for Mr. Lelièvre. Earlier on, you were talking about non-refrigerated transport. I was wondering whether you could give us some details on that and the impact on that on the communities, and also give us some examples of what you meant by infrastructures that could be improved. Thank you very much. Let me answer your questions. My objective is the following. Right now, there is a lot of effort put into providing fresh milk, for example. But if you look at the time that it takes to load the plane in Montreal and then lands in northern communities, it may take 6 or 7 hours for that plane to reach the community. So very regularly, the products have to be thrown out before they're even put on the shelves. This leads to an increase in the price of a product. And since you have communities that have just 200 or 150 inhabitants, when you throw away, say, 2 shipments of milk, it has a huge impact on the viability of these cooperatives. So we don't have enough infrastructures that cause this avoidable waste. I think that if there were better infrastructure for refrigerated boats or planes, that would be great. And NC does do a lot, certainly, but increasing the sales of products does not necessarily translate to greater viability. For example, every time a fridge breaks in one of the stores, it cost between $3,000 and $5,000 to repair that refrigerator. So if you think of that for a community of 200 inhabitants, that's a huge amount of money. So it's not just transportation that you have to take into account. There's a local manpower and other things that are very costly that cause increases in prices. Obviously, I'm just talking about the cost of food. That is my area of expertise, but there's a huge impact on the infrastructures if you don't take into account the current demographic situation. Earlier on, you talked about the NNC program. Do you think that program should be reviewed so that there would be a better way to contribute to reducing food insecurity? Certainly, every program has to be reviewed regularly. You have to have really good statistics to make the right decisions. Very often, decisions are made too quickly that can have negative impacts. But right now, I would say that it's quite a good program for Nunavik. For Nunavik, it really is very good. The only thing I see is that in my case, for example, there are orders made from Montreal, and the revenues made are not gone directly, they don't go directly to the communities. For example, if someone orders sugar, it doesn't add to the economic viability of the community. It does have a significant impact. Purchases made outside of that do have an impact on the communities, and I think that should be reviewed. Did you notice an increase given the current crisis that we're experiencing? Generally, the cooperatives have seen increased sales caused by the pandemic, but that's mainly because people can't travel. It was extremely difficult for people to travel south, so the people had to buy in their local communities. In your view, what should the government do to ensure food security for all people in the North and all Indigenous people, regardless of their economic situation? I think that we have to increase their minimum income. That is one good solution. But there are all sorts of poor areas in the North. A lot of people earn less than $30,000 and are trying to raise a family of 4 or 5 children, and the cost of living is very high. Earlier on, we talked about increasing income and the fact that it is important to increase support. When you talk about traditional increased support for Northern Quebec, what do you think of that? Sorry, quick answer, please. Well, traditional food comes locally. There doesn't seem to be any smoked char and other types of meat that you can get from elsewhere. You really have to get that locally, these traditional foods. Do I have any time left, Mr. Chairman?
We have lots of business to continue to, so I'll thank you for that and go to Ms. Ashton for 6 minutes.
Thank you. First of all, thank you to all of the witnesses here today. Many of you have referenced the dire infrastructure needs across the North, and of course how it impacts the work that you do. You've talked about the impacts on cost of shipping. You've also talked about how climate change is hitting the North. As anyone working in Manitoba knows, First Nations across the east side of Manitoba have worked tirelessly over a number of years to try and realize long-term infrastructure solutions, specifically the construction of an all-weather road. I want to acknowledge that Bloodvein and Barons River First Nation were able to get the road built before the provincial government cut the program, and of course the federal government stepped away as well. Now, of course, the Northwest Company would know the circumstances or the work that First Nations have done on this front, because you have stores in every single one of these communities that are still fighting for an all-weather road. Pungassi, Little Grand Rapids, Poplar River First Nation, St. Teresa Point, Garden Hill, Wasagamak, Red Sucker Lake, Oxford House, God's Lake Narrows, and God's River. All of these First Nations were slated to build all-weather roads themselves, along with the work of others. And of course, it's been devastating to not have that project come to fruition, because we know climate change has hit hard. We, further isolating these communities. We know that the COVID crisis has also exacerbated isolation and has had impacts in terms of food insecurity. So I guess my question to Northwest Company reps, I mean, the goal of this meeting is to bring forward recommendations to the federal government, and of course it's important to have recommendations that are in line with what First Nations are calling for, and recommendations that really look towards the long-term well-being of these communities. So would you support the call of Eastside First Nations for federal and of course provincial government, but of course the focus here is the federal government, support for the construction of an all-weather road along the east side of Lake Winnipeg, and as a way of dealing with food insecurity and overall well-being?
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Ashton, for the question. So what I would say is we would support any infrastructure investment, including the projects you have mentioned, that would address the underlying costs of operating north in food security. So obviously all-weather road access is one, but there are other forms of infrastructure investment that are just as important for the northern communities that we serve. One example would be to move to renewable or more reliable sources of energy. One example I can share with you is in Pikanchicum, the move from diesel generated power to line power has made a huge improvement in the benefits, in the food security of that community, because they have much less breakdowns now, fewer brownouts, and therefore less wear and tear in their appliances and houses. Right, that's one example. Another example would be the investment in, for example, community freezers in the north, so that local food and local food production can be used as part of the food sources. So yes, we would support, and we do definitely would be part of, we would support any form of infrastructure investment, especially a broad infrastructure investment program that really addresses the underlying issues of highlighted around income security and food insecurity.
I appreciate that. And of course, all of these First Nations I just referenced are already on the hydro line. So really the need for an east side road is top of mind, and I reference Pungassi. This is a First Nation that received national attention during the COVID crisis. They don't have an all-weather road, and a acute COVID patient ended up waiting 17 hours for a helicopter to land on the ice. I mean, these conditions are just, I think we can agree, unacceptable. And whether it's in terms of food security or broader life and death issues, there needs to be a long-term solution here. I appreciate your response on that. Again, to the Northwest Company, I want to acknowledge, of course, we know that high costs are a real concern, and often we see on social media people share the high cost of goods in northern stores to call for action. And for example, in July of 2020, during the pandemic in Arctic Bay, many people spoke out against the fact that a package of baby wipes was priced at $31.25, a shocking figure. I understand the Northwest Company took steps to apologize, but that was only after this came to light through social media. It shouldn't have to take people taking to social media to expose such an unfair practice. So I'm wondering, what does the Northern Store have in place to make sure that the prices you are charging are in fact fair, in line with fair practices, and in line with the subsidies you receive, so that it's not only when social media storms hit that we see action from your company.
Just have a half a minute. Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you for the question. Let me first start by saying that we, during COVID, we've been especially sensitive to the issue of food prices. We froze prices for 60 days after COVID hit, and we didn't take any cost increases, pass it through. We pass through all freight costs and all freight subsidies from NNC. We do not take a single cent, and we've been audited, and that's been proven. And last piece I would say is, as a whole on the company, we make 4 cents in the dollar for every revenue because of the high operating costs I've referenced. Are we perfect? No, right? So there will be some examples where we've made mistakes in terms of our own systems, but that has never been intentional, and we've always learned from it and, put controls in place to ensure that those kinds of mistakes in terms of the way the prices are communicated don't get repeated again. So those examples, as we've said, we've apologized, but those were unintended, and we've always corrected them even as soon as we've noticed them on the shelves. But we do not take any unintended profits, and we've taking the right steps during COVID to ensure that the customers we serve are taken care of.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the committee's indulgence. We're almost at noon. I'm going to suggest that we have an intervention from each of the parties for the 5-minute and 2.5-minute round, which would be Mr. Viersen, Ms. Jones, Madame Bérubé, and Ms. Ashton. If there's no opposition to that, because we still have another panel to go, then I would propose that we proceed in that manner. Is everyone okay with that? I'll take that as a yes. And Mr. Viersen, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. And I want to thank the witnesses for being here today. I just want to pick up on a comment that Mr. Thorhag made just around northern, he's from Iqaluit, and he talked just about northern food production. I've been to Iqaluit once, along with Mr. Anangus Sangari. We went there together with committee a couple of years back. And that was a comment that I made as we left there, was around just in northern food production. We heard that there had been, for the last 100,000 years, there'd been about 14,000 people living in northern Canada, and they'd survived. And yet today, those same people seem to be struggling to get food. And yet I said, well, where's all the local food production? What happened to it? And he commented about that as well. I just wondering if he's got any ideas on how we can restore that northern food production. One idea in particular, or maybe a more broader strategy on that. So, Mr. Thorhag.
Thank you for the question. The reasons for the lack of capacity in local food production are numerous. They go back to our colonial history, the forced settlements and communities, the dog slaughter. But the biggest reason today is that it's been hard to reconcile food production, harvesters, and harvesting and hunting activities with the wage economy. So a lot of hunters that are operating now are doing this on a part-time basis. They have to find sources of revenue elsewhere, say from a spouse or just from a full-time job, and they're not able to pursue this as a full-time profession or as a full-time activity. There was a point not in the not too distant past where a hunter could generate revenue through the sale of furs. Now the price of furs is continuously declining. There isn't really not a market for that anymore. So their source of revenues are essentially nil. So that's why we're looking at ways that we can start to turn hunting into what it was once in the past, the most respected profession in the community. And I don't know the exact mechanism to do this, but there's a few ideas that are being floated. One is that we provide a salary to hunters, and they provide the food freely to communities. There's already been some pilots that have shown that this more than the benefits to communities more than outweigh the cost of the salary. But there could be smaller ways that we could support hunters in the meantime.
Mr. Wilson had his hand up, Mr. Viersen. Wilson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could just make a brief comment on this, and it's really twofold. Mr. Thorhag mentioned, some of the obstacles to hunting today. and the need to have an income, in essence, to subsidize hunting. Because one of the obstacles that many of us hear to hunting is just the high cost of supplies, etc. So I think that comes back again to the question of income in order to be able to equip oneself to pursue hunting. But the other thing that I think that I think is worth mentioning, and this is why country food is only a part of the solution, is that for millennia, the people were part of nature, and these things were always in balance. But now, whether it's through modern medicine, through health and other social services, the life expectancy is improving, and that's a good thing. But it might be throwing the balance of nature out. And now hunters are reporting having to go further and further. Climate change is impacting where game are. So all of these things are very, very intertwined, and it's hard to. It's like a spider's web. When you pull on one side, other strands tighten and loosen accordingly. Thank you for the opportunity.
Just about out of time, Arnold. Seconds.
I'll cede my time. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Ms. Jones, please go ahead. 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's really glad to hear these witnesses today. I know that you have firsthand experience of providing services around food security in the North. I want to say to Mr. Thorek, I've been in your facility in Iqaluit, and I've been very impressed with the work that you've been doing there. And also, Mr. Wilson, I'm a C3 alumni too. I had the pleasure of traveling with MP Adam Vancouverson and saw him in that Inuit canoe. He was pretty awesome, let me tell you. So I know that we also have another guest coming up from Arctic Fresh, and I've toured their facilities as well. And I want to acknowledge the good work that's being done. I also want to say that over the past year, we've talked a little bit about the CERB program. There's been over 10,000 Nunavut Mute who've received the CERB program. That's more than 1 of 4 of every resident. So when you look at these programs that we're translating into benefits on the ground over the last year, everything from caregiver benefits to the emergency response benefit in particular, there's been over $100 million in new money that have been generated in that economy. That's why we've been able to see things like a little less pressure taken off the food banks and off other services. However, having said that, we know that the demand is still there. This year in the budget, we added $163 million in additional funding for food security. That's in addition to what is currently being paid out now under the Harvester Support Program, which in its first year has already shown to be successful, and many opportunities to build on that program to meet the need for food security of traditional foods. Also, it's in addition to what we currently pay out to supplement nutritious foods like that comes through the Northwest Company and through other companies across that region. So I guess my question is this. I hear several things from people on the ground on a regular basis. One, they want to have the ability for direct ordering. How do you think that the role that government can play in that, and how do you see that translating on the ground? We get requests for subsidized shipping for online orders. Is there a role for the government of Canada, and how do you see that we could play a role in seeing some of these things materialize? And of course, the other one is with regard to income supplement. So as I said, this past year, over $100 million in additional money went into the local economy, into families' pockets, into homes. We also added more money into food banks, food services, seniors networks. And in addition to that, we paid out money directly to Inuit-based governments that they could use for both food security vouchers and heat security vouchers for residents. So all of these things we've seen are making a difference. So how do we improve on it? And how do we ensure that people have more options to food security than what they have today? So I'm going to listen to what the panelists have to say. You can speak from your perspective of the services you currently deliver, or maybe you have thoughts that are outside of what you're currently doing that we'd be interested in hearing.
And do it in a minute.
Oh, sorry. We can start with you, Mr. Thorick.
Thank you. Yes, I do remember your visit at the center back when in-person visits weren't frowned upon. I won't speak to the first two questions because there's a lot of logistics experts on the call that could probably answer that. But on the third one, yeah, the benefits that have been flowing into the territory this year have been amazing because we've had these problems for years, and we've actually been able to see an improvement in a lot of people's livelihoods thanks to this. That being said, because years to come, we won't be dealing with a pandemic, we're worried that we'll have the same problems of food insecurity, but we won't have the the same level of financial supports that we did in this year. So in a way, while the country was essentially in crisis, in a lot of measures, the supports actually created some benefit for the territory.
Thanks. I'm sorry we're out of time at that point. We go to Madame Bérubé for 2.5 minutes. Madame Bérubé.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Earlier on, we were talking about environment and climate change and how it related to food insecurity. I have a question for Mr. Lelièvre. Could you explain the fact that since we have climate change, we nonetheless have a lot of food insecurity, and there are a lot of contaminants in the food supply, given all of this? Could you expand on that, please? Well, let me tell you what I see. When I started to work in the North 20 years ago, there was ice until the ice started at the end of September, and now we have to wait until December to go and do ice fishing. And that's in the space of just 20 years. We've lost 2 or 3 months worth of ice. So imagine if we do nothing, or if steps aren't taken, then there may not be any ice left in Nunavut. And infrastructures are not following suit. Earlier on, we were able to send strawberries without any problem, but now they have to be put into refrigerators, so that adds to the cost. The same thing happens with meat. We were able to freeze it, but now we can't keep it for longer than 6 months or so. There is frozen meat that comes up there, and it has to thaw. And this can have huge impacts on the cost of food just because of the shorter season. In your view, what did the government do to allow the Indigenous people and the people in the North to hunt and fish and harvest food in a completely secure and safe manner? Well, there are costs associated with hunting and fishing, equipment, canoes, etc. It's very expensive in the North. A family can't afford to have a snowmobile and a motorboat and everything at the same time. It costs a lot of money to be able to hunt and fish in order to ensure self-sufficiency. Perhaps there should be an additional subsidy for hunting and fishing. That could certainly help.
Sure, for the NDP intervention, Ms. Ashton, or I see Mr. Cannings. Nikki, are you ready to go? 2.5 minutes, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. And then I'll take the second hour my colleague Richard Cannings will take over. So a lot of focus on poverty reduction, critical, absolutely. Also very much appreciate the initiatives that many are pointing to that were very impactful during this crisis. Federal government initiatives. I want to acknowledge the work of the federal government, the way they responded to many of our calls as well in the NDP to get at poverty reduction, across the country, but specifically, obviously, in the North. I think it's really critical that we acknowledge that many across the North are in a constant state of crisis when it comes to poverty and food insecurity. COVID exacerbated that, but this is ongoing. So we do need to see measures, including direct financial supports, including creative measures that were developed, like the Harvesters Food Program, which, for example, here in Manitoba, many received fish through the Freshwater Fish Marketing Corporation that was brought together by Northern Fishers. Again, a really critical program. And of course, there are other programs to point to as well. In terms of poverty reduction, we know that co-op models, we know that community food centers are very important models to get at both meeting the needs and bringing back revenue into communities, job creation, et cetera, et cetera. I'm wondering, perhaps from the co-op, if you could speak to how important the co-op model is in terms of poverty reduction. Mr. Wilson.
1 minute, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for the question. I'm obviously I've drank, swished, swallowed the Kool-Aid about the co-op model, because I believe firmly that small isolated communities that many would consider a captive market are the types of communities that, if they're best served by a monopoly, they're at risk of that monopoly power getting abused. And to me, it's only natural that you get the best of both worlds when the owners and the consumers, the users of the business, are the same people, that these things can operate in harmony. And anything that represents, allowing for direct orders or other distractions, take away from that critical mass. They represent economic leakage, and they're ultimately bad for the community. And through the co-op model, which, based on its 7 principles, is autonomous local ownership and member democratic control, you are now returning control, influence on pricing strategies, on what to do with surpluses, on investments in local infrastructure, back to the community level, not to an office in Winnipeg like ours. So I think that that's very, very important. Thank you.
Thanks. And so that brings us, committee, to a suspension for replacement of the panel. I'd like to thank our witnesses for excellent testimony, very productive, informative hour or more that we've spent. But now we need to set up for our next group. So this meeting is temporarily suspended. witnesses who are now all wired up technically and ready to go. It sounds good. We have from Arctic Fresh Inc., Vice President Operations, Silvano Stendu, and the Vice President of Business Development, Merlin Racinos, and also the Chief of the Trondeck First Nation. Do we have Roberta Joseph? Yes, okay, good. Sometimes I lose people on my grid, so I apologize for that. So Arctic Fresh, please go ahead for 6 minutes.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Do we each have 6 minutes, or is it 6 minutes in total?
Normally the one, you're both representing the same group.
I'll make mine very quick then. You know, I've listened to the witnesses in the prior session, and it sounded quite good. They're doing a lot of things, but it sounds like they're relying on the government quite a bit. They're got all kinds of issues that are happening and not a lot of solutions. So I would like to pass on the rest of my time to Mr. Racinos. We'll talk about Arctic Fresh and what we're proposing. Thank you very much.
Mr. Racinos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I would like to thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to come in front of you and to discuss this. To us, it's a very important and is what drives us. Food insecurity is our mandate. I'll tell you a little bit about Arctic Fresh and how we started. We started because when my wife was growing up, and she went through a very food insecure time, all of her childhood. She tells me when she used to have tea and bannock to eat once a day, most of the times they had to use the same bag of tea for multiple cups. This went on through most of her childhood. When she was growing up and now she's a teacher, she started to see this again in school with all of the kids. And then so, you know, one night we were here and how can we change this? How can we do this? And that's how Arctic Fresh started. So Arctic Fresh is a social enterprise. And our mandate is to fight food insecurity and to build Inuit capacity to empower individuals and communities. So when we first started, we started with an online store. And the online store was to provide personal orders directly to the customers. This would allow us to give them an opportunity to be able to order directly, but also reduce price because of not having the cost of overhead or a heavy overhead. We did really well when we started. The communities responded very well. As we progressed, we realized that we needed to really dive deep into food insecurity. And what is food insecurity, especially in the North? What we quickly realized is that is a shirt, you know, not the same shirt fits everybody. There's different levels of food insecurity. And what the government and what everybody was doing was really not fighting food insecurity, but really making things more available to the people that already were able to be food secure. So what we have done is we have leveled down and really dived into more into the food insecurity. We quickly realized that we do not have an economy in our communities. Every time a dollar gets spent in our communities, 93 cents of that dollar leave the community on the first transaction. That is huge. So we started to look at it and how can we create an economy? Because what we need is to create an economy to be able to create those jobs. You create those jobs, you're creating wealth within the community. And if you rotate that dollar as many times as you can before it leaves the community, you're actually creating wealth within the community. So we looked at micro businesses, and you know, I was listening earlier about that there is not a big market for an operation. Yes, that's correct. If you're looking at the operation as a normal size, we have to be innovative. We have to be Inuit. We're the most innovative people ever, and that's what kept them alive for thousands of years. They thrived because they were innovative. You know, they invented the sunglasses, they invented the kayak, they invented so many things because they needed it. So By creating micro businesses, you're able to rotate that dollar many times, which then in turn creates wealth for all of those people that have those things. In regards to our food side, so we have our operations, which is the online store, but we're actually also looking at creating a self-sustaining store. We believe that that there is a huge inequality of wealth in the communities, and most of the previous speakers have talked about this. So how can we recreate it? And then so we're looking at harvesting support program. So what we have done is we have done mainly pilot projects where we pay hunters to go hunting, they return the food, and in return we take that food and sell it locally at a much reduced cost. Okay. Most of our community relies on country food for over 30% of their food. Okay. Some rely on it very heavily for over 60% of their food consumption. So what we have done is we have done develop a study and a business plan to create a self-sustaining store. This self-sustaining store will be able to have a greenhouse that is able to produce the product, but it also has a meat shop. And it's all modular, so it can be, made into different, whatever the community needs, that's how it can be set up. So this modular house will be able to get hunters to go hunt seal, to go hunt fish, to go caribou hunting, come back, process it. And then now, we will exchange with other communities. And Naujaat is very heavily with caribou, but they don't have some of the other things. So now we can do an interchange of processed country food that would allow us to create a market within our communities. We
just
are also working with
Mr. Racino. It's just about at time. Can you finish?
Thanks. Yes. So we have looked at different things, and we're working with the space agency, the Canadian Space Agency, as well as NASA, to create systems on how we can give food autonomy back to Inuit communities.
Well, I'm sure that this discussion is going to be picked up. So if there's anything that's missed, and if we don't hear it back again, you can certainly submit more written information to our community. But thank you for that. And now for 6 minutes, I invite Chief Joseph to go ahead. Chief Roberta Joseph, welcome. 6 minutes.
Good day. I would like to thank you all for the opportunity to present on behalf of the Trunda Kwichin to today's Committee on Food Security and Northern Communities, as this is a key priority for Trunda Kwichin. Food security is a growing concern in our northern community. Having access to all times to fresh, nutritious food is crucial to the Trunda Kwichin culture and physical well-being. Our elders have advised us about the importance of ensuring adequate food supply and the possibility of future scarcity. Yukon First Nations have taken steps to address these concerns, including the establishment of community gardens and farms. The Trunda Kwichin General Assembly provided direction to its council to address issues associated with food security, including the development of sustainable local food production and ensuring Aboriginal rights to traditional foods are respected and maintained. Nearly all of the food sold in Dawson stores, including perishable items, are shipped to our community by transport truck. The lengthy drive to Dawson City from major distribution centers in the south, often 35 or more hours away, adds a considerable cost to groceries. The increased prices for food is often a hardship for our First Nation citizens, especially those living in marginal circumstances. The guarantee of supply is also tenuous, as illustrated by a highway washout in 2012, which severed supplies routes to the Yukon. Fresh produce was not available in stores within hours of the highway closure, as people stocked up in anticipation of lengthy supply disruptions. Less appreciated is a diminishing supply of traditional foods and impacts on the First Nations way of life. Food security in Canada is also defined through a Western lens and measured using economic indicators. More specifically, one's ability to purchase food is the sole determinant of food security. This measure, however, does not account for the importance of traditional foods and medicines. The diet of First Nations people in the Yukon relies on the access to healthy populations of fish, caribou, moose, and birds. Harvesting these wildlife involve traditional practices integral to our sense of self and maintenance of culture. While our people have had access to abundant numbers of wildlife for millennia, that supply is no longer guaranteed. Recently, plummeting Chinook salmon stocks has meant several years of voluntary foregoing a harvest of traditional food, and Chinook are now listed as a species of concern. Not harvesting salmon has meant the abrupt termination of a culture practice that survived untold generations. Climate change and encroaching development is also impacting migration patterns of wildlife, including caribou, which has led to disconnect between Tr'ondëk Whutchין citizens and traditional harvesting practices. Tr'ondëk Whutchין Council has lent their voice to efforts aimed at limiting development in both Alaska and the Yukon, which would impact those migratory patterns. As at the direction of our citizens, the Tr'ondëk Whutchìn established a working and learning farm to ensure food security for our citizens and greater Klondike community. We built the farm with financial assistance from the Canadian government and developed culturally sensitive agriculture training with Yukon College. The initial cohort of students included 18 Tr'ondëk Whutchìn citizens, including a significant number of youth and vulnerable individuals. Our efforts were also recognized with substantial investment from the Arctic Inspiration Prize that was used for construction of a 3-season greenhouse. The farm is steadily increasing its capacity to supply local produce and meats. Feeding our community is a great source of pride for our First Nation. We are hopeful this farm will become as integral a part of our culture as fishing and hunting game has been since time immemorial. In conclusion, the rivers and the forests of hundreds of kilometers in either direction of Dawson City have sustained the Tr'ondëk Whutchìn for millennia. But a changing world and quite literally a changing landscape has meant adapting to ensure adequate food supply. There are still many questions about what the future might bring, including how food will be transported to our community as petroleum-fired vehicles are phased out. Ongoing federal financial assistance for our farm and other similar First Nations operations is crucial, as is a commitment from Canada to honor its national and international obligations with respect to First Nations' right to access, use, and benefit from a safe and healthy food environment. I'd like to thank the committee for the opportunity today and appreciate all of the presentations that have been provided. Masicho.
Well, it's our pleasure to hear presentations such as you just made, Chief Joseph, and our Arctic Fresh guests as well. And now it's time for the committee questions. And I have Mr. Schmale, Mr. Batiste, Madam Bérubé, and Mr. Cannings. Jamie, are you okay to go? There you are.
I am. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses. Chief Joseph, maybe I can start with you on that. When you talked about the changing landscape, and it seems that we're looking at transportation in some cases to be a major issue. Is there any discussion amongst your community or even the territorial government about deep water ports to help with shipping access?
Unfortunately, we don't have availability for deep water ports. We have the Yukon River, which freezes up every winter, and the Yukon River is a lengthy river. It's one of the largest in northern Canada, our longest in northern Canada. It goes through Alaska and into the Bering Sea, so it's quite extensive. And the other port is like that's near the Yukon is Skagway, Alaska, and that's not. I guess it's makes it more complicated shipping from another country. And we haven't had discussions about that with Yukon government, but we've had like discussions in regards to transportation and ensuring that there's emergency measures in place to address situations should something disrupt the transportation process into the Yukon. And although at times emergency measures can't act quickly enough, but it's something that we'll probably have to take into consideration a lot more within the emergency measures process. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief Joseph. I appreciate that. Maybe I'll quickly jump over to the Arctic Fresh group here. I want to continue on with the conversation that was mentioned about keeping money inside the community and providing that economic opportunity for the citizens. Maybe you can talk a bit about what you were just closing on about the work you're doing with the Canadian Space Agency to help with food access.
Thank you. So we are working with this agency. We sort of started with a program in Cambridge Bay where we're building capacity for individuals in Arctic Bay with the Arctic Research Station that is stationed there for growth of vegetables. And we have actually developed it into more. And now, as you know, they have launched what is called the Deep Space Food Challenge, which is how can we create, with technology, innovate production of food in harsh climates, and to potentially do it in space, but to test it in the earth to be able to have a significant of impact as well for our human population. So we are working with them to see how we can utilize technology from around the world, really, because the challenge is open to the world, and incorporate it into what we already have here, so we can be able to return that food autonomy back to our communities, so they are able to grow their food, they're able to harvest their food, they're able to process their food, which creates jobs while they're doing it. If you bring in a vegetable from the south, if you bring in meat from the south, it creates jobs where those places are, but it doesn't create the job that creates here are low paying jobs. So how do we create better jobs within our community? And that's by building capacity and utilizing the systems and innovations to be able to create it.
What about processing capacity? Obviously, it's quite low, but you're right about the jobs down south. How is there too many rules, regulations, red tape stopping somebody or even a co-op or however you want to structure that from opening up or processing, whether it be meat or otherwise, in the north?
No, we have, like I said, we have developed the feasibility as well as the business plan for it. So the biggest thing was really to get a kind of a health certified process in place, right? It has to be certified so we're able to process it. So that was really the biggest thing. What we have done is we have looked at module. So the self-contained storage module, so it really is as much as we need. If the community is big, potentially you're having 2 processing modules. If the community is small, potentially you have 1 processing module. One of the biggest thing is infrastructure. So, infrastructure is costly in the north, so for them to invest in this is something that is a very strong commitment. But it is a commitment that needs to be made if our end goal is going to be to fight food insecurity, because now we're doing it in 2 ways. You're creating local food that is going to be at reduced cost, plus also creating jobs within the community.
Is there any look towards, and I'm sure probably your group is already looking at that, in terms of large-scale greenhouses or something like that to grow vegetables year-round and try to help stabilize that market?
Very briefly, but go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, we have looked at it. And to be honest with you, the large-scale greenhouses don't make too much sense because our community is small and transportation to other communities is going to be too much, or the cost is too high. So what we have looked is a modular greenhouse as well that can allow us to, expand it or retract it as the community needs.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Batiste is next for 6 minutes. Jaime?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I want to start off with Arctic Fresh. And, one of the things that you had mentioned was that there's not a lot of solutions being mentioned, but you did have a unique idea, which I heard, and you mentioned the importance of establishing an economy through micro businesses. Can you tell me, how is that different than the way co-ops work, and why is this a best practice that the government should consider?
So the co-ops work in a system where the business, the whole thing is to create revenue for the community, for the owners at the end of the day, right? Now, most of these systems is not managed or run by the owners. They purchase, they pay, and then at the end of the day, they receive a patronage if the system is well run. The difference between that and a small economy is that you as an individual, your livelihood is invested into this micro business. So you want it to be successful. Not only that, but you have the autonomy to making decisions in regards to how and what you want to do within your business. We're building capacity right now. We're teaching 15 and have helped 15 small businesses open across the Baffin Island right now, and we're doing this by teaching them how to properly run a business on the ground. We're supporting them with logistics, we're supporting them with everything else, and then so now they're running their own businesses, and it's about their investment into it. And the biggest thing they talk about is how they want to make something for their community, but also for their kids. So the investment is bigger, and they take ownership of it and the proudness of it, versus a system where it's tailor and layer out, where they purchase and they get patronage, but they have very little within in between.
So can you expand on that a bit and tell me, do you believe that it's just a matter of communities supporting each other's economies that would help the food security, or is there more to the situation, this solution? Feel free to elaborate on it because I find it interesting.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll give you a quick example. So right now, let's say that you have $100 and you want to go buy a coffee cup at the co-op. You go buy that coffee cup at the co-op, you paid $100. The co-op, let's say, makes $20 on the coffee cup. The remaining of that is shipped down south. Now, what the co-op does is reinvests that and hires hires a few people here and there. With that micro businesses, with the micro businesses, let's say you have that $100 and you go buy it from a micro business. Well, now you give that person $100. What they're going to do is they're going to need clothing. Well, they're going to go buy to the clothing micro store to buy clothing. Now you have rotated that money and you have created an economy. As many times as you can get that $100 to go around the community, you're creating that economy, and you're giving them an opportunity to really gain that employment, and they're in control of it, so they're the ones that are deciding. And so it plays both at, how do we get people into the into the paying system or the wage economy, well, at their own terms.
And do you think that would remedy the fact that there's a lot of inequalities in how much things cost up north? I mean, you're still dealing with higher rates and higher prices, but I understand spreading it out, but does that mean that it solves the challenges facing food security?
Well, it does in a way. So because when we look at food security, a lot of the times we think about food. We don't think about everything else that is part of food security. So when we dove deep into the acknowledges of food security, it's not just about the food, it's about the wages, the employment. I'll give you a quick example. Housing. Okay, housing is very expensive in the north. Why is that? Well, because most of the people that are building those houses in the north are coming from outside our territory, which then increases flights, accommodations, meals for all of the people that are here, right? So now you've taken the housing, which potentially would cost you, let's say, $150,000 to about $250,000, because now you're paying flights, you're paying accommodations, you're paying meals. So by doing this locally, and creating those local economy, then you're able to lower that cost of housing, but also keep as much money as you can within your community. And by doing that, you have created more employment, and you have created more wages that are able to be spread around the community. So, like I said, going back into food security, it is the term of food insecurity that in food security that is really it's a really complex term, and so when we look at it, we have to look at it with a complex view.
So given the unique market that you operate in, are there specific places where government policies could be put in place that would support your work?
1 minute.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. You know, there is many things. You know, we talked about Nutrition North. We struggle very heavily with Nutrition North at the beginning, you know, and it's the systems that the way that Nutrition North is done is really created for large retailers. So it's not created for the people. It's not created for the small retailers. It's created for the large retailers. Also, opportunity, you know, funding more harvesting support programs that are able to bring more economy into the communities, you know, infrastructure. And I think most of the previous people have talked about it, so I don't want to repeat it, but that investment into the community and its people, not so much into the retailers and its people, but the community itself.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam Bérubé, 6 minutes. Please go ahead.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My questions are for Arctic Fresh. You mentioned earlier that you are fighting food insecurity, that you have an online foods shop. You also talked about a number of instability areas with regard to food security. Could you expand on that, please?
So we operate, I call it an octopus, because it has grown to be an octopus. At the beginning, we operated the online store, which we really wanted to provide better food, more affordable, and a bigger variety to the communities. Slowly, as we progress with the concept of food insecurity, we realized that it's not as easy as that. If we truly wanted to fight food insecurity, we needed to do more. So today we operate the online store. We have a construction company. We have an airline charter company, and we have this business development company as well. All of this is in terms to be able to help the communities and the people in the communities to empower them to be able to do something as they want to do. So we have looked at, and I said, so we operate many different things. Today, we're actually, right now, we're renovating a 4,000 square foot building in Igloolik that we're going to turn into our head office, where we're going to be hiring people to manage all of our operations from here in Igloolik. We're also looking at building 3 of the self-sustaining stores that I had told you about in 3 different communities to be able to do interchange of country food. As we are heavily with the fish, with the seal, we don't get a lot of makta or caribou. So we are really trying to see how we're breaking down food insecurity, of the complex issue, and trying to see how we can tackle each level of it.
On parlait tantôt aussi des aliments traditionnels.
Earlier on, there was reference to traditional food. We know full well that it has a great impact on mental and physical health of the people in all communities. Could you describe the importance of traditional food, please?
Thank you. Yeah, traditional food is irreplaceable. It is something that it connects the individual to the land and back and forth, right? Our communities heavily rely on country food, fish, caribou, seal, walrus. And so like I said, at least 30%, this is a study that we have done, at least 30% of our communities rely on country food for, 30%. So it's more. So now what we need to do is how do we support? How can we make this right? So again, Wade had talked about the wage economy and how hunters, it's expensive for machines for different things. Well, we can support that by subsidizing part of that. We can support that by subsidizing some of the machine, the oil, the gas that is being produced. And in exchange, they come back and sell their food to us or the char and whatever. We process it and able to sell it locally at a much reduced cost. Right now, we only have a couple processing places in Nunavut. But if I want to buy a fillet of Arctic char from the processing plant in Rankin Inlet here in Igloolik, I'm paying $60 for it, even though I can go grab an Arctic char from a hunter here for $20. So now, how do we gain back by processing it locally, creating jobs and creating an economy?
J'ai une question pour Madame Joseph. La chef, est-ce que...
I have a question for Ms. Joseph. Do you think access to government programs would be better to improve the infrastructure? Should they be improved to give better access?
Thank you for that question. Yes, I think that access for to improve access would be great. You know, like if there deems to be like an emergency situation, I think that, you know, one of the things that we were considering was an airship, as well as working with them in conjunction with other First Nations. I think that that would also assist our First Nations jointly. If we had something like that, we would be able to address emergency situations. We'd be able to support the emergency measures in that sense as well. And like transportation is not the only issue here in the north, but it's the cost of the high cost of food, and especially for those individuals with low incomes or who rely on social services for assistance, and you know, they can barely make it through the month, and so there's so many factors that lie into that have already been mentioned throughout the presentations already in regards to food security.
We're at time now. Thanks, Chief Joseph. Thank you, Madam Bérubé. And Richard Cannings, welcome to the committee. Please go ahead for 6 minutes.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to thank the witnesses for being here today. And I'll start with Chief Joseph again. In my previous life, I was a biologist, and I had the pleasure and privilege for some summers to spend that in the northern Yukon doing biological surveys. It's interesting to hear you talk about farming. I don't think a lot of people in southern Canada appreciate how hot it gets in Dawson in the summer. I'm from the Okanagan Valley, and believe me, it was very hot in Dawson many times when I was there. And with those long days, I know you can produce some wonderful food. But I wanted to talk to you about a couple of the other, country food items you mentioned. One was Chinook salmon. You were concerned about populations of Chinook. That's a broad concern all through the British Columbia and the Yukon. I know I'm speaking to you from the territory of the Seal people, the Okanagan Nation. They have an active Chinook salmon rehabilitation program going on. I just wanted to ask you, and I must say I've had the pleasure of eating Chinook out of the Yukon system caught by First Nations around Mayo. Just wanted to ask you about how much help you get from Department of Fisheries and Oceans about your concerns with the Chinook populations and what's causing that, and how you can improve that.
Through a lot of good questions there. Through our collaboration process outlined in our agreements and our treaty agreements, we're able to collaboratively work with Department of Fisheries and Oceans here regionally to try and address the decline of the Chinook salmon. And we mainly work with them in terms of how we manage the harvest, because it's an international species migrating from the Yukon down to the Bering Sea through Alaska and back. So there are over 100 communities along the Yukon River, mainly in Alaska, that are relying on the Chinook salmon. And we've had to volunteer not to harvest for one full life cycle now, and we've just recently extended that for another year until we have a salmon harvest management plan in place for our First Nation. We work with the other First Nations as well in the Yukon, and from time to time we meet at the international International Yukon River Panel in Alaska or here in the Yukon on the management of the Chinook salmon, and review all of the indicators that are that identify the salmon genetics from Alaska and the U.S. side and the Canadian side, and determine the total allowable harvests. Unfortunately, for many years now, there's also a border escapement to consider, and for many years now, we just haven't. The border escapement hasn't been met, and the numbers have just been declining. There's many different factors for the decline. There's warming oceans and warming rivers through the migration of like the rearing streams and the main Yukon main stem.
Yeah, and the other species you mentioned that has that migratory pattern between Alaska and the Yukon is caribou. I've spent a summer in Old Crow with the Vuntut-Gwitchin and know how they're inextricably tied to caribou. We've had a lot of concerns recently with threats of opening up the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to oil exploration and development. I'm just wondering how the caribou management is going from your eyes, and how the federal government might help there.
Well, in terms of the porcupine caribou, which we're referring to here, the international species, we have a board, Porcupine Caribou Management Board. There's 8 communities in the north that are and governments, federal, territorial government, that are a part of the board, who make review all of the information, the biological information, the indicators, and the migration patterns, as well as the population census of the herd. And we work together closely. Our communities work together closely through the board. They meet. There's an annual meeting that provides recommendations to all of the parties affiliated. There's not a really strong relationship on the international board, and I think that's where the federal government can come in and assist with ensuring the federal agreement. I mean, the national agreement is the international agreement is being pursued to be actively working. The Alaskans have their lack of commitment is to provide members to the board. So then, as a result, there's no international board meetings on the porcupine caribou. And so that's one of the challenges. We do have challenge here with porcupine caribou due to climate change. The porcupine caribou hasn't returned fully into our traditional territory for like at least 6 years now.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We're at time beyond, actually.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask the indulgence of the committee once again. I think we can get a partial second round of questions. We would need an extension for that. Are we okay, committee, to do another set of questions with interventions from each of the parties? That would be 4 for the next, to conclude this witness testimony. Is anyone opposed to that? I'm seeing none, and I need a motion to extend past 1 o'clock. So someone offer a motion. Eric Melillo, all in favor? That's carried. We'll go to 2 5-minute questions with Mr. Vidal and Ms. Zan, and then finish with Mr. Cannings and Madam Bérubé, of course. So Gary Vidal, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to start by saying how much I've appreciated the testimony of all of you today. The information you've provided has been fascinating and valuable. Solutions that come from the local community level, where it's your lived experience, it's the seeing what goes on. The solutions coming from that level are always more valuable than solutions being posed on somebody from a distance somewhere. So I appreciate the testimony you've brought and the comments in response to the questions you've already been asked. For the Arctic Fresh folks, Mr. Racinus and Mr. Sendu, I so much appreciate your entrepreneurial approach to solving problems, the talk about local economy and the talk about opportunity for people in your communities. That's a conversation I've been having for years in northern Saskatchewan, a long ways away from where you are. But I want to focus. I just want to change it. I could listen to you talk about what you've done for hours. I'm fascinated at what you're doing and appreciate it. But I want to change the focus just to hear a different perspective for a second, just for something new. In the information, I went and looked at the information on your website about your story and your history, and you talk about your 3 pillars, and you talk about the pillars of health, community, and youth. And I want to just drill a little bit in, or ask your opinion maybe on the value of educating your youth relative to the context of healthy eating, the entrepreneurship. It's so important that we educate our youth to make that long-term change in the context of all this. I'd be curious for your perspective on that, and I maybe start with Mr. Racinos first, and then Chief Joseph. I want to just prepare you that I'm going to come back to you and ask the same question in the context of your lived experience as well. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you. That is definitely one of our pillars is youth, and is really how do we build that capacity. So understanding that not everybody grew up eating vegetables in our communities. Not everybody grew up eating this sort of food. So how do we build capacity locally so we're able to utilize those? Like most of the stuff that is highly subsidized right now are things that we're used to eating in our southern communities, but not so much what has been historically eating in our communities now. So one of the things that we do is every time we do classes, teaching at the community hall on cooking classes, how to utilize different things, how to do different recipes, and we incorporate traditional hunting of food like char, caribou, and things like that, with other things like vegetables, and different things like that. I'll give you a quick example. One time we had a bunch of broccoli in our community, and so we started to teach how to make different types of broccoli salads. Before, in the cell swaps, everybody would sell poutines in the evenings, when people were trying to, get a little bit, they were selling poutines. Now they sell broccoli salad with clubhouses, and it's something that the community has really liked. They enjoy the different flavors, the different type of broccoli salads that can be made. So you got to be having that. You have to focus on that, building that capacity locally. And I really think that the youth are our future. So we really need to focus on that as well. But we also do it in a business capacity sense. We're teaching different youth from different communities how to start and run their own business. We partner up with Makiaktak. We cover their costs. We help them with logistics. We help them make partnerships, with suppliers and things like that, so they can start operating their small business in their community. And what this does is, once people start to see that somebody else is doing it, they want to do it too, and it creates this ripple effect. Now you're learning how to eat. You're learning how to cook different things, but you're also at the same time learning different activities that are going to be self-sufficient for yourself in your community.
We just have a minute, Chief Joseph, if you want to reflect on that question.
As mentioned, youth are really a key and important part of our community. We invest a lot in our youth. We feel that like the various youth have different interest, and so we try to meet their level of interest. And we had many youth who were interested in working on the farm, and and learning about agriculture through the training program, and that's key and important to our community that one day they will be taking over management of the farm, and we look forward to when that time comes. Because we continue to invest in the farm heavily, it's important that we have some level of food security, and it's providing a much stronger and growing economy in our community.
Thanks very much, Chief Joseph. We now go to a 5-minute intervention with Lenore Zan. Lenore, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I also want to say thank you so much to the witnesses. Very interesting and very exciting work that you're all doing. So thank you so much. In Budget 2021, we have announced the $163.4 million over 3 years to expand Nutrition North and engage with Indigenous partners to address food insecurity. So obviously this investment is going to be important. I do have a question for you regarding where the help should go. Mr. Nathan Obed, the president of the Inuit Tapirit Kanatami, noted that there are huge socioeconomic disparities in the north, and as you know. So especially, he said, between the Inuit and the non-Inuit. And he continued, yet the Nutrition North program is need blind. So the family that has a median income that is 3 to 4 times that of another family is going to the store and getting the same subsidy for the same items. So would it be desirable for Nutrition North Canada program to provide more targeted supports to families with lower income? And if so, how do you think this should be done? Perhaps could we start with Chief Joseph and then go to Mr. Rosinos?
I think that I think it would be great to be able to provide funding to the First Nation or the bands to be able to develop the programs that they see that are needed in the community that can meet the needs of those who need it the most. We find that with Jordan's Principle, we do provide a food program to our young people, and ensuring that everybody has a good lunch 3 times a week. And it's ensuring that our children have the nutrition that's needed. And I think that, we have taken advantage of applying through the Poverty Coalition for foods there as well. And so that was provided to elders. There was like meat and poultry that was provided to all of the elders. So, we're looking after, we know who needs it, and looking after those individuals in the community who would benefit the most from these, who have little or no income.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Rosinos, I see you nodding your head there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I'm in total agreement with Chief Joseph. We need to co-create, and that's key. Co-create with our communities to see how and what they see is the most needed. If we look at it and we say this is what we think you should be doing, I would feel very unfair for the communities, because the reality is they're the ones that need to tell us what it is that they need and how they need that support. For us businesses or a social enterprise, it's up to us to do our job to help our communities and the people that we serve. So, what I would do is co-creating with communities to see how that support can be really level and given to the people that need it the most and need it at the community levels. That would be very, very well done. Thank you.
Thank you. I have another question. I know time is short here, but regarding the infrastructure, and you had both mentioned infrastructure, but that equipment is needed to to preserve and extend the shelf life of food products in the North. And some people have said that that's the biggest gap in the North, is that the infrastructure is not there for that. So can you each explain the impact of infrastructure deficits on food security in northern Canada?
Very quickly, please. Go ahead.
I think just like for some places like freezers could be a great way of preserving foods. And I know like in some places it's very expensive to transport freezers, but it's one of the most beneficial ways of preserving foods in the North throughout the summer. You'll be able to preserve your foods throughout the summer rather than letting it go to waste, because that could happen as well as like storage for like cellar root vegetables that you grow in the summer, you can keep all winter as well. So facilities for that. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Rosinos, very quickly, I guess.
Thank you, and I'll make it as quick. Yeah, definitely community freezers, but also packing material for those freezers. It's one thing to put a caribou in a freezer, but then, it goes freezer burnt, and then you're sort of left, with some spoiled meat. So really, not just the infrastructure, but also other capacity within the infrastructure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Berube, 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for Arctic Fresh. What are the major problems that you encounter? And what are the possible solutions that would be required to help your co-op for you to improve the situation?
Thank you. The biggest issue that we encounter is logistics with our airline partner. That really is one of the biggest sort of issues that we have, is the amount of time for the food to sit at different locations before making their way to the community, and how that is stored in those locations. So that is one of the biggest issues that we encounter. The second one, that we had encountered at the beginning, not so much anymore, but was the level of scrutiny that Nutrition North had taken into our reporting. We were given no support or no education or capacity to do the reporting that they needed, but they require us to be on point to make sure that we were able to deliver it how they wanted it. And that really caused us a lot of problems at the beginning, because first of all, we had no money, we had no time, and we had very little staff. So we had to invest, and we had to shut down for approximately 7 months because of that, because they were not satisfied with how we were submitting, but yet they provided, again, very little when it came to the support for us to be able to do how and what they wanted.
Ma question est à la...
My question is for Chief Joseph. In your view, what would be the solutions to make sure that access to traditional food is improved?
Well, we access is not a real concern here, but what's happening is our traditional foods are declining, and so it's making it more challenging in that sense, as I mentioned earlier, as well as like the climate change affecting the migration of the porcupine caribou, not migrating in the normal migration patterns that it used to travel in. So I think like maybe more studies in terms of what's affecting the declines of various species, I think that would be helpful, as well as as well as I think maybe even like for emergencies, like if we were able like to help our economy by investing into like airship and being able to manage it with a number of our First Nations here. That would assist our communities, and it would assist the Yukon and other businesses as well.
Thanks, Chief. And we go now to Mr. Cannings to finish off for 2.5 minutes.
Well, thank you. And I will go to Mr. Racinos to talk about his testimony. And, I really appreciated your comments about self-sufficiency in northern communities. My own small experience with food insecurity in the north was one summer I spent in Old Crow, where everybody in the early part of the summer was waiting to get out on the land, waiting to go to the fish camps, but they needed their food supplies to go out there for any length of time. And the food all came in on the plane, TNTA from Whitehorse, and it was very hard to predict what you'd get. One Tuesday, you'd go down to the plane and all they had was ice cream. And next week they'd come in and all they had was soft drinks. The community was really sort of held hostage by that. And everybody was waiting for pilot biscuits, So you made a comment, I think, about that micro businesses were a better model than co-ops. And I assume you're meaning co-ops in the big co-op sense where, that money flows out of Old Crow or Gluluk or wherever and goes south to the head of the co-op land. But what about the difference between micro businesses and small co-ops that are based in a community? I just wanted you to clarify that. That's where I got a bit confused and how perhaps smaller local co-ops would be a good model.
We have about a minute, but go ahead, please. Thanks.
Thank you. So co-ops at its core fundamentally is a really good thing for communities. The problem is that a lot of times we don't put what is fundamentally on paper to use or to do. And that's where the problem becomes. When you don't have autonomy over what you're doing within the community, it becomes really hard for the community to be able to do something, right? For me, the co-ops do play a really good role within it, but we have to innovate, and that is key. We can't stay still within the same frame of mind because that's how we become extinct. So we have to innovate, and if we can't innovate, we have the Amazons, we have different players that are playing now into Iqaluit and things like that. And that's because before there was that system that no competition was good until the big guys came in and just destroyed the economy, which is what's happening in Iqaluit with the Amazon and all of those things. So before we get to that level, we have to innovate locally. And that is by creating that micro businesses, by creating that opportunity within our community. So we don't leave it to the big boys like the Amazons, the Walmarts and things like that to take over and really destruct our economy at the end because they have the money, the know-how and everything else.
Thank you so much. And
thank you.
All of our witnesses, Chief Joseph, our Arctic Fresh guests, you've heard the accolades from members of the committee, and that's not false flattery. This has really been outstanding testimony, very helpful. Our analysts now has a lot of work to pour over as we prepare our report. But I want to thank you so much once again. You're free to go. We have just a brief bit of committee business to do right now. Thanks once again. Mr. Clerk, Ms. Jones has an issue with regard to changing of witnesses, and I think we could give quick approval to that. Ms. Jones, do you want to outline once again your request?
Yeah. So my request is that we exchange the Tessawassen First Nation Peace Officer Program witness that was scheduled for May 13th and replaced him with Andrew Bayan, who's the Director of Land Code Governance. And that's for the First Nation Land Management Resource Center and the work plan. Is that okay with everyone?
I'm looking for anyone opposed to that, and everyone's good. I think you just passed muster there. Mr. Cannings, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, sorry. I'm new on this committee, so I don't know the history behind whose witnesses those are, or I'm assuming that they're not witnesses called by the NDP that were being transferred out.
Yvonne?
Just wanted to check.
I can't answer that. I don't know whose witnesses they were. All I know is that
the clerk
was, the clerk might be able to clarify, but one I think couldn't make it, so there was a request to change the witness.
Yes, that's correct. It'd be replacing a Liberal witness with a Liberal witness.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to check.
And okay, so we have agreement with that, and with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Ms. Zan moves that we adjourn. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, everybody. What a wonderful 2 hours we had.
Thank you for reading my